Okay, well, hey, I thought, I've had a couple people ask, I wish you'd kind of speak on this. Maybe you heard me speak on it somewhere else, I don't know. So I thought it would be a good time to do this. And really addressing the top question up there, how do I find and keep volunteers? How do I find and keep volunteers? Is the question we're going to tackle today. Last week, I think it was last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago now actually, we were at a chamber lunch and we heard Angela Wilhelms. Did I pronounce that right, Pastor Mark? There we go, good. She is the president and CEO of the Oregon Business and Industry. And she was sharing during the lunch there at the chamber on how businesses and industries are lacking staffing today. And then she gave what she believed the reason why businesses and industries are lacking staffing. And she said she believed it was because of recruitment, retainment, or retaining, and training. She said that the problem is directed at those three things: recruiting, retaining, and training. I thought she would say something like people just don't want to work. Because that's kind of how I thought in my brain. People don't want to work, so that's the reason why we don't have employees. But a woman who works in this field all the time, that wasn't her answer. She said recruiting, retaining, and training. And I think, as I thought about it more, I think it's probably true for volunteers in the church. True for volunteers in the church, that's the same issue that we're facing. One of the things I hear often from our team, and then I was at Summit a week and a half ago, and heard it from friends that I interact with, again, over and over, we need more volunteers. And we can't get the volunteers to come back that were volunteering before COVID. So that's a common problem we see in business and industry, we see it in volunteer, in church, and so we want to tackle that. And if we're going to recruit and retain more volunteers in the church, and we're going to find and keep them, then I believe we have to have an all hands on deck approach. So I'm glad that Pastor is okay with me sharing this, because this doesn't just apply to ministry leaders. I think sometimes we think, well, that's the director's responsibility. But I believe no matter if we're a teammate or a team leader, we can be a part of the solution. We can help in the process of finding and keeping volunteers. So I realize that not everyone in the room here is a key lead. Some of us serve on CR, some of us are Hope Kids, some of us are ELL, some of us are Fit Team, and you're team members, but you can still be a part of the process. And so don't check out. For teammates to be effective, though, I believe they need to be informed, and so that's what we're going to do today, and given permission to be a part of the process. I think sometimes teammates don't feel like they have permission to help recruit people. And I'm going to give you permission today. We're deputizing every one of you to be a part of the process today. You can all help, okay? So keep that in mind. So as I said, today we're going to talk about that question right there: how to find and keep volunteers. And it helps first to understand today's volunteers, where we find them, where they're at, what they look like, where they are, where to find them. So first of all, let's answer that question: where or who are they? Who are they? And I'm going to allude to a book that I read pre-COVID, so keep this in mind. This was new on the others before COVID happened, so some of it's a little dated, but I think some of it still applies. That's called The New Breed. It focuses on how to recruit and retain volunteers. It's called The New Breed by the McKees. It's a father-son effort that did this. And they talk about how volunteerism has shifted in the last 20 years. Has anybody ever read that book? So one person, awesome. So you understand some of the things I'm going to talk about here. But these are some of the main things that I saw that he said were shifts in the area of volunteerism. First of all, family dynamics have shifted in the last 20 years. Scheduling, education, professional skills, technology, and generational preferences. And that's just a snapshot of volunteers pre-COVID. Now we come on the other side of COVID, and that even complicates it even more. And so here's some things that the book talks about volunteers. First of all, they say that they are busy, with many obligations, and often already volunteering for multiple ministries and organizations. So think about it. Think about the people serving in your ministry. Think about how many of them serve in multiple ministries. Isn't that true?
Yep.
So that statement, I think, is very accurate. They're busy with many obligations and often already volunteering for multiple ministries and organizations. They desire simple and clear on-ramps to begin volunteering. It needs to be simple and clear to get involved, how I can get involved. They prefer flexible schedules, bite-sized projects, and short-term commitments. They may be highly educated and very tech-savvy. They expect to be empowered, not micromanaged. And they don't want to just contribute, they want to make a difference. Those are some of the things that they pull out in that book. I would add 3 things that I think since COVID that we need to consider also. They may be enjoying their less busy life and are not interested in starting back up and having that busyness again. I think that's a reality. I also think that for some, they don't feel safe around crowds still. I'm still surprised at how many people I still see wearing masks, face coverings when I'm out in public. That's a reality. And they may need a lighter role. And that's something that that Wes Davis talked about a couple weeks ago when we were at Rethink. I remember him making that statement. If we're going to get these people back to volunteer again in our church, they may have to start out with a lighter role because of the things I mentioned earlier, and then build back into that. So that's who they are. Next is, where do I find them? Where do I find them? And the McKees point to the rise, and I think this is really smart. They point to the rise of 2 huge generations who are ready, willing, and able to help in our church. The baby boomers and the millennials. Now, I would add, since the book was written, older Gen Z, because now we have Gen Zs who are 19, 20, 21, and they're ready to volunteer also. But here's a hint that I want you to have, and write it down. When looking for volunteers, and you have a handout if you want to follow along in that stack of papers that Jen made, just so you know that if you haven't found that yet, you want to write some thoughts down. And I added 4 other documents too that we'll make available on the website for those who are watching so the leaders can share them. And we'll refer to them a little bit in the conversation. But the hint is this: when looking for volunteers, consider life stage. When looking for volunteers, consider life stage. Yes? We are on the one that says that has the topic right on the top.
These are the 4 that I was supposed to.
There's not one. Oh, you didn't get the one. Flower. I thought I sent it to you. I thought I sent it. I think I sent you 5 documents. Let's just wait. I have it on the top of my desk if you want to go. I have it right here if you want to go right in front of here. I think I brought it in.
Yeah, I only see 4 in the.
So maybe I just didn't add it in there.
Yeah, I'll go make copies.
Well, I didn't put it in there either. It might be on the top of my desk.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's not, well then you can just write all of the things down real fast.
Okay.
You have a key?
Yeah.
Click on the top of my desk,
Okay.
or on the side of my desk,
Okay.
or the trash can.
Okay.
Thinking I don't need it. But we'll let you come back and follow along. We're not going to hold up for that. So, but here's the hint. You can write it down on all those other papers that you have there. When looking for volunteers, consider life stage. So, baby boomers and young millennials, and I would say older Gen Zs, are in the sweet spot of volunteering. And let me explain what I mean. Now, that doesn't mean we don't consider all stages, because all stages, everyone's willing to volunteer at some stage, but these people are in the prime life of volunteering. Baby boomers are empty nesters. They're retired professionals who want to make a difference and are not afraid to make a commitment. They say, well, that sounds good, but the reality, let me give you a couple examples. How many of you guys know Emerson Smoker? Emerson Smoker is part of our church here. Emerson's a retired man, owned Right Way Electric for years. You know what he does, spends his majority of his time doing today besides caring for his wife? He runs the entire Albany Helping Hands wood yard, which produces all the firewood that's sold to coastal stores and delivered to all the coastal stores in the Northwest. He runs the entire project. Here's a man that's retired but doesn't want to be retired. He still wants to be involved. He still wants to do something of value and importance. That's my point. I'll give you another example. I know of a church over in Central Oregon for 5 or 6 years has run a after-school lab for kids, elementary kids. Every Wednesday when school's in, they have this lab going from 3 to 5 every Wednesday. They took a break 1 year during COVID because they were forced. They've been back at it now for 2 years. They need about 30 volunteers to make this happen. The vast majority of them are baby boomers, retired individuals who don't want to just sit in their rocker and watch the TV or travel around in their RV. They want to volunteer. They want to make a difference. They want to be a part of something, and they have the time, they have the means, they have the ability to do it. So that's what they're talking about in that book, is they're in a sweet spot to volunteer. Here's the second one, younger millennials, and or I would add older Gen Z. They have not yet started their families. They have more flexible schedule, and they're looking for a cause to invest their time and energy into. I'll give you an example so it doesn't just sound like it's words on a paper. For years, and we're going to see it this weekend here at our Hope Church campus, but for years when we would run events through our network, we raised up a team called 8410. These were young adults who would give their time, their talent. Did you find it?
Yep,
Thank you. Where was it?
the garbage.
I'm not thinking that I gave it to you, so I apologize. She'll hand it to you and you can catch up. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
But these are young adults and I was always shocked by them because they would give 3 days of their life to work 14-hour days, to sleep on a church floor and eat okay food because they believed in the cause, the mission, and they loved the community that they had while they were here. And they had the time. They weren't strapped with kids. They weren't trying to figure out how they were going to pay their mortgage. They were in the sweet spot of volunteering. Much like the baby boomers were in the sweet spot on the other side of their timeline, if you understand what I'm saying. And I would also add this, and the book doesn't talk about this, but I believe it's important to consider this. Another ideal teammate is special interest groups. Don't overlook special interest groups. Now, I know that can sound negative when we think of it in political realms, but don't think of it that way. What I mean by special interest groups is think of parents who have kids in your ministry. They have a special interest to see your ministry succeed. Many of them do. Some don't care, but there's some that do. They want to see it succeed. And they have a special interest, and they may be willing to give their time and their talent to help to see it succeed. Or think of CR. Many times the people who are involved in CR are people who came out of recovery, who have already recovered, or people who have family members who are struggling and they have a passion to help people like that. So that's what I mean by special interest groups. All three of those are kind of in the sweet spot, if you will, of volunteering. But what I'm not saying is don't consider everyone. We want to be looking at everyone, but there are some people who are in ideal spots. Volunteers still come in all shapes and sizes. So here's something that's important to remember. Volunteers are the champions in your ministry, they're the champions for your ministry, and they're the champions of your ministry. We can't do it without volunteers. The church is the largest volunteer organization in the world, and it runs on volunteers. Can't do it without it. And they are the champions in it, the champions for it, and the champions of it. So I gave you homework to do a couple weeks ago, or last week I guess it was, of having your night, and you weren't here, so it doesn't matter if you had it or not. You get to do it anyways. It's not that difficult. But you're going to have 90 seconds to share your elevator speech on how you're going to recruit someone to help you on your ministry. And if you're not in that ministry, you've got 90 seconds to share how you're going to recruit someone to join the team that you're in, even if you're not the leader. You got 90 seconds to do that. Now, we're not going to have everyone come up here and do it in front of everyone. What we're going to do is group up in threes. So you're going to find 3 other people. So you go ahead and make eye contact and find your 3 people that you're going to be a part of. Okay, everybody got their 3 people? Does anybody have an odd one out where there's only 2?
I'll jump over there.
Okay, you're going to jump over there. You got 3? Who? You guys got your 3? Okay, you guys got a 3 over here? What about back here? You got a 3? You guys got a 3?
I would like a 3.
Is Alice left out?
No, Khalil's left out too.
So Alice, Khalil, and Paula. Okay, does that make sense? Or is Alice in the group? I don't know.
4 of us.
Okay?
Well, what about?
How many, and the pastor's going over here, right? Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody good? Okay, so here's how it's going to work. Here's how it's going to work. One of you is going to be the recruiter. You're going to give your elevator speech to one person, not to both. It's a one-on-one conversation you're having with the recruitee. So you're the recruiter when you're giving your speech. There's someone who's the recruitee. You're listening, engaged, and then the third person's the timer. So you got to get your phone out because you got 90 seconds. And when 90 seconds is done, the elevator opens and the person walks away and your time's done. So you got to be concise. You got 90 seconds to convince someone why they should join your team. Your recruiting speech, getting them on the team. Everybody understand? Not that difficult, is it? So find your spot. You can spread out if you want. I'll give you the go. I'm going to keep a timer also because I know some of us will abuse the time. So this shouldn't take very long.
Do we switch?
We'll come back together now. How many of you got some new volunteers to help? All right, you got a couple guesses? Good job. How many found it easy How many found it easy to do your elevator pitch in 90 seconds? How many found it very difficult to do all in 90 seconds? Okay. Some of you found it. Did someone did it in 30 seconds? That's what
Paul was
So Cleo's now on the admin team.
So far, she's on the admin. I saw that. Casey said yes to help him with the 55 plus. She's going to be there on Thursdays now. That's awesome. I walked by and she said yes. I'm interested.
I'm on the tech team now.
The tech team, great. Well, you're probably on all the teams out there at your place, right?
I need to resign. I'm going to Canby.
Wow. So far we've talked about who they are, and that's a great book. I'd recommend you pick that book up. We've talked about where to find them and the importance of considering life stage. Baby boomers, retired individuals, don't overlook them, and millennials and older Gen Z. Now I want to talk to you about what I call the 6 stages in the perpetual circle of volunteer recruitment and retainment. The key word here is perpetual, okay? It's a circle, it never stops. You never stop recruiting and retaining. When you stop, when you break the circle, you fall behind. So we shouldn't be surprised that we've fallen behind after stopping for a year.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
We stopped for a year, and now we're trying to get the circle going again. It's ongoing, you're never done. So I know it can seem tasking, like, man, I just want to get done, I want to stop recruiting. You're never done. You're never done. So let's talk about the 6 stages that I've discovered that help me. These are things that have helped me over the years that I just want to share with you. The first stage is prayer. Prayer. Jesus told us to start with prayer. Matthew 9:37 and 38. He said to his disciples, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who's in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the fields. See, I know that can sound like a Sunday school answer, like, oh, how do I solve this problem? But you just got to pray more. And it can seem that way, but if Jesus said it starts with prayer, he's not wrong. He's absolutely correct. We have to trust and believe that what he said is true, and we have to start there. Matter of fact, his brother James, later in his book, James chapter 4, verse 2, said, we have not because we ask not. It starts with prayer, okay? And we can all do that. Every one of us, no matter if we're a team lead or a teammate, and many of us are team leads and teammates, we can all start asking. The second stage is recruitment. Recruitment. Now don't think the only ones who should and can recruit is the team lead. We've already addressed that. Some of the best volunteers, some of the best people who recruit volunteers are your current volunteers. They're some of the best people. You just got to give them permission and release them to help. I want to give you an example that came to my mind as I was putting this together, and I think Pastor Derek might remember because he was a part of it. But I remember when we were running Amplify, and I was sitting, I believe it was at Izzy's, with Pastor Derek was there. I can remember you being at the table. I think Chris Weber was at the table. I think Matt Novak might have been at the table. There was a couple key people, and we were racking our brains trying to come up with enough evaluators to volunteer and evaluate for that Amplify. We needed about 60. And there was 4 of us racking our brains to come up with those names. And then the light bulb came on, and we thought, what if we picked and released our top evaluators, the ones who got the culture, the ones who are great at what they did, and we released them to help find other volunteers. They had people of influence that I would never know. They had people of influence that Derek, remember that, Derek? And we thought, let's just list out 5 or 6 of our top ones. We would like, hey, we want to duplicate them, and let's see if they can help find people that they know who can help recruit. And we had an abundance of evaluators. And we started to recruit that way by allowing our evaluators to help recruit people they knew that we didn't have access to. It's very important that we understand that some of the best recruiters are our volunteers. So who should we pursue? Ideal team players. How many remember what are the 3 characteristics of the ideal team player? Anybody remember?
Hungry.
Hungry.
Humble.
Humble. What was the 3rd one?
Smart.
Smart. Yep. Not intellectual smart or educationally smart. Not that those are bad, but really just people smart. That they're just common sense people smart. They can get along with people. Those are the people you want to recruit. Humble, hungry, and smart. So where do I enlist them? Or how do I enlist them? Well, I believe that in order to enlist someone, you have to be able to answer 3 questions first. These are 3 questions. Before you start the recruiting process, you got to answer these 3 questions. Because these are questions they're asking already. They may not be verbally asking them, but they're thinking about it. Well, you're already in the conversation. The first question is why? Why do I want to be involved in this? Why should I be involved in what you're asking me or telling me about? So you got to have a compelling vision. You got to have a compelling vision. There's a great book out there, it's a little old now, but Simon Sinek wrote, Start with Why. And it's still true. You start with why. Jesus' why, his compelling vision was to reconcile all men and women to the Father. Remember that? He wanted to save the entire world and reconcile mankind to himself. That's a compelling vision. The next question is, you got to be answered is the what. You got to be able to give a clear mission. The what to me is the mission. What do you want me to do? I heard the vision, but what do you want me to do to get there? Jesus' what was he had a very clear mission. To preach the gospel, his good news to the entire world, to the ends of the earth. So he had a compelling vision, and he had a very clear mission. And those 2 things have motivated people to. I have friends that have sold everything they have, packed some stuff in a suitcase, and went to the ends of the earth because of those 2 things: the compelling vision and clear mission. Matter of fact, I know someone today who moved out of the comfort of a beautiful house and moved into a church apartment with their family of 4. Or 5, I guess there is. Because of that compelling vision and mission. It's motivating. People go, oh wow, I want to be a part of that. You got to have a compelling vision and a clear mission. The 3rd one is, you got to be able to answer the how. The how is, how do you want me to do that? So why do you want me to do it? What do you want me to do? And how are we going to do it? Those are the 3 questions you have to be able to answer. And this includes a healthy culture. That's why I gave you the handout of our healthy culture around here. We want to continue to get that in our life and promote it to our teammates. And a simple strategy. Jesus' how was go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to observe all the commandments, and to operate in a culture of love and service. That was his how. So Jesus had a compelling vision, he had a clear mission, and he had a very simple strategy. We have to be able to answer all 3 of those, I believe, effectively before we can really start recruiting effectively. And here's a warning. If leaders do not give a clear vision, mission, and strategy, volunteers will invent their own. We don't want that, because that causes disunity. If everybody has their own vision, their own mission, and their own strategy, that's a nightmare. It's up to us as the key leader to have that in place. We need to be able to, and if we're a teammate, we need to know what it is from our leader and promote it. Not promote our own agenda, but promote the clear mission. Okay? Once we're able to answer those three questions, the why, the what, and the how, then I believe we're ready to start recruiting. And here's the 4 steps I have used for years. I'm just going to share them with you. Matter of fact, if you serve with me, you're going to recognize some of these things because I've probably done these steps with you. The first thing is I pray and ask the Lord to open my eyes to see who belongs on my team. I'm thinking often as I'm walking through the church, as I'm living life, Lord, who am I going to encounter that you want to be a part of my team that I lead or the ministry that I lead? So I'm praying, I'm asking God to open my eyes. I never feel like I have enough teammates. I'm always trying to build my bench. Sometimes it's like I want to get that person on the bus. Now, not any person, the right person, the humble, hungry, smart person on the bus. Then I'll figure out what seat they belong on the bus maybe. I may not even know where they're going to fit best, but if they're humble, hungry, and smart, I'm going to recruit them to be a part of my team. I'll figure out later what position they play on the team. But let's get them on the team if they're the right person. But I'm praying, always praying that way. The second thing is I pursue those people. When God puts someone on my heart and says, this person maybe would be a good person to have on your team to help in this capacity or whatever, I pursue them. Don't ever underestimate the power of the ask. The power of the ask. People respond best to personal invitation. Many people would love to serve, but they're just waiting to be asked. And a bulletin insert doesn't work as a personal ask, just so you know that. Jesus personally invited people to follow him. Think about it. He personally invited them to follow them. And don't say no for people. Sometimes we feel like that person's so busy, they wouldn't be interested. Don't say no for people. That's not your job. Your job is to share the vision, to share the mission, and let them decide. Sometimes we automatically discount people because we think they wouldn't be interested. Don't assume someone is too busy. Busy people get things done. And people have different capacities. Remember that. Just because one person's capacity is limited here, someone else's capacity ain't way up here. And we don't always know what it is. So let them say no. You don't say no for them. Here's the third thing I do. So I start with prayer, then I do the personal ask. And the third thing I do when I'm sharing that personal ask is I start with my compelling vision and clear mission. And then I ask them to pray about joining the team. Now, I don't know how many of you put that in your elevator speech, but I encourage you to redesign it if you don't, to ask them to pray about it. Ask them to pray about it. Darren Kaiser said, irresistible invitations are marked by opportunity, not by desperation. They're unapologetic in their nature. My elevator speech starts with why and what, and then I ask him to pray. And you say, well, why ask him to pray? Let me tell you why. Because if I'm in the hallway at church, or at Next Steps, and I'm talking to a young lady about maybe being on the Thrive teaching team, I might have a 50% chance that they're going to say yes if I say, hey, would you teach this class with me? And it really depends on how they feel. Are they in a hurry? Are they hungry? Do they want to get out of the building? I have 50% chance. They might say yes, they might say no. But if I share my compelling vision and my what and my why, and then I say, would you pray about that? No one says they won't pray. I have not yet had one person say, no, I won't pray about that. They just don't do that, especially not in church. They're not going to tell you that. Now, they may not pray about it, but they're going to say they will pray about it. And if they start to pray about it, God can get a hold of their heart. God can begin to work on their heart for the harvest. And that gives me an opportunity to take step 4, which is to have a deeper conversation. To have the how, the strategy. So my 90-second elevator speech might be to share the vision and the what, and then would you pray about that? And they're going to say, yes, I'll pray about that. Great, can I get back in touch with you in a couple weeks and see what you're feeling about that? Maybe I can share a little bit more. Again, they'll say, oh yeah, that's fine. Then I put it in my calendar. Contact Pastor Candace, in 2 weeks. And now I have a deeper conversation maybe around a cup of coffee or in my office or Starbucks or at their home, whatever the case is, and I can share all 3 of those again. I can share the first 2 and I can share the third one. And what I have found when I follow that simple strategy of those 4 steps, I seldom lack needing enough volunteers. They come. They say yes. More often than not, they say, yes, I will do that. We want to jump to, hey, will you help? This is what I need, will you help? And they may or may not say yes in that moment. But if you get them praying and you're praying and you have time to share deeper and really share what it's all about, what I found is that's what they do. Is they often say yes. So if you're a teammate, let me just say this. Know the vision and the mission of whatever team you're serving on. Know the vision and the mission. And help with steps 1 through 3. Step 4, the reeling them in, belongs to the key leader. They're the ones who need to make the final decision if they belong on the bus and where they fit on the bus. But all of us can help with steps 1 through 3, regardless if we're the key leader or if we're a teammate. So help. Does that make sense? I would encourage you, get them praying and go for another conversation where you can share deeper levels and help them get on the on-ramp. Here's stage 3, structure and systems. Structure and systems. These help people join the team and stay on the team. They help people join the team and stay on the team. If you want to retain volunteers, you got to have good structures and systems. Structures are onboards. They're the process of getting people on the team. They're like the on-ramps to the freeway. And if they're not easy and clear how to get on, you likely won't get on. People won't bother to get on. So I gave you a handout. One of the handouts we gave you is the Hope Church's structure of how to process volunteers. Some of those things are volunteer application. That's huge, especially if you're working with minors. You have to do that. If you're working with adults, it's not necessarily required to fill out an application. But there still should be a process of going through some of this stuff, getting to know them, make sure they're in the database. Application screening, again. Every person working with a minor has to do a background check here before they can ever work with kids, and we can't stop that process for liability and for safety of our kids and children. Maybe a spiritual gift test could be a part of that process. Like if you're not sure where they fit on the bus, but you're like, they're humble, hungry, smart, I want to get them on the bus, I'm not sure where. You can talk to Pastor Dustin. He's got a spiritual gift test you do for the CERD class that he would gladly share with all of you. So you can have that person go through it. Maybe an interview. I think an interview is important where you can sit down and figure out where they're going to belong on the bus. It gives you, again, another chance to share your mission, your vision, your strategy, the policies of your ministry, the procedures, all that kind of stuff. And then I think it's smart to use a trial period. Like, hey, let's give this a shot on this seat on the bus and see if this works for you. And 90 days later, see how they feel about it, see how you feel about it. If not, maybe you move them to another spot on the bus. If they don't belong on the bus, send them to the 15 bus and they can have them. No, I'm just teasing. But they may not be on the right bus. You know what I'm saying? But we can be a part of that. Systems are put in place to equip and empower volunteers to deeper levels of ministry responsibilities. See, Jesus took time to disciple and train his volunteers, to train his followers. What do we do in the church? Many times our training's 15 minutes long and then we throw them in the deep end. And then we wonder why they don't stay around, why we don't retain them. Because we don't have structure that enables them to stay, that encourages them to stay, that creates an environment where they want to stay. And I think that's wrong. No wonder it seems like we have this revolving door in volunteerism. As leaders, it's our responsibility to provide opportunities for them to learn and grow in their ministry skills. That's our responsibility if we're the key leader. And we must provide them with the resources and the training that they can be a success. They want to be a success, and if they feel like they're successful at what they're going to do, they'll stick around. But if they feel like they're not making a difference, if they're not successful, they don't have what they need, they're likely going to exit out the door somewhere over time. The goal of having effective structure and system is to create a good process for onboarding new volunteers and equipping them with ongoing training so they stay for the long haul. So here's a question I'm going to ask, and some of you guys can give some feedback. If you're a key leader, how can a teammate, because we have some teammates in here, how can a teammate promote this stage? What's the best thing that a teammate could do in this stage to help you? Of systems and structure.
think feedback is helpful.
Okay.
Feedback on their onboarding experience, or, maybe just asking them, how can I better equip you with whatever that might be.
Yeah. So feedback, asking for, make me better, make the system better. Good. Anybody else? I wrote down, for my two were follow the structure. Well, I want teammates who are going to follow the structure and support the system. Or support the system, follow the structure, whichever way you want to say it. But I want teammates that are team players, not individuals who are just doing their own thing. The stage 4 is expectations. Clear expectations are a must. People become frustrated if they don't know what's expected of them. So it needs to be very clear, this is what the how is. This is what's expected of you. And don't be afraid to set the bar high. I believe people want challenges. Remember Emerson Smoker, the bar's high in that guy's life, and he's just knocking it out of the park. People want to be a part of great causes, something bigger than themselves, something that's making a difference. That's why they would give 14 hours days to sleep on a church floor, because they believe in the mission. So here's some things I've learned that help me. First of all, communicate expectations. I have found great value in creating a simple one-page ministry description, and I've given you those. So you have the handout. We're not going to go through it, but you can see the one that I created for our men's ministries. Something that clearly lays out the responsibility and what a win looks like in that role. That this is what a win would look like. This is what we expect of you. And, if you want help putting that together, I'd be glad to help you put something like that together for your ministry if you don't already have that. If you want to refine it or update it, I'd be glad to help you with that. The second one is release responsibilities gradually. As you bring someone on the team, release responsibilities gradually. I believe Jesus did this. He modeled it this way, and this isn't new, but it's something that I learned a long time ago, and I've tried to remember it and put it into practices. Jesus' model was this: I do, and you watch. When he first invited his disciples to follow, all they did is just walk around with him and watch what he did. But then there came a time where he says, I do, and you help. And then a little further down the road, he said, you do, and I'll help. Send out the 72. You go do this stuff. Come back. We'll talk about it. I'll coach you. I'll help you along the way. And then ultimately, you do and I encourage. I'll be with you to the ends of I'll be with you forever, but I'm sending to heaven. I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit to encourage you, to empower you, to help you. You see what I'm getting at? But that's a great model, Jesus' model. I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. And then you do and I encourage. And remember, with responsibility, as you give away responsibility, you got to hold people accountable. With responsibility comes accountability. Don't be afraid to inspect what you give away. And expect failure. If you give stuff away, expect people are going to fail from time to time. Use those failures as opportunity to help people grow. Use those as pastoring moments to teach and help people grow in that. And if you find that the person who fails isn't willing to learn and grow, then they're not humble. And maybe they need a different spot on the bus. Or they need to be on a different bus. Best volunteers are empowered volunteers. Think owners, not renters. You want people walking through the building who behave like they own it, not like they're renters. They're coming and leaving and they don't think about it from Sunday to Sunday. You want owners who are thinking about that ministry throughout the week. So share, if you're a teammate, you can strive to exceed the expectations that are laid out for you. Stage number 5 is meetings. Now I know from you guys, really, meetings? Why does that matter? But I know we live in a day where people tell you you need less meetings. And I don't necessarily agree. You need less bad meetings. You need less ineffective meetings, boring meetings. But I don't believe that you can lead and do ministry effectively without any meetings. Some people would like that, but I don't think that's wise and it's effective. There's high value in holding good team meetings. There's high value in it. And that doesn't mean it could be a monthly meeting, it could be a bi-monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting, but there needs to be a time where you're rallying your team together. It just needs to happen on a consistent basis. Meetings bring people together. They build unity. They cast vision. They provide training. They pray. It's a time for prayer and to give ministry away. That's why Pastor values having these meetings. We do this every Tuesday. There's a reason why we do it. Because he understands the value in it. There's value in having meetings. Meetings that equip them for success. And the best meetings, I believe, have an agenda. You got to have an agenda if you're going to have a meeting. Otherwise, that meeting will go on for 3 hours and you'll accomplish nothing. You got to have an agenda in the meeting. And I love that simple agenda. I'll share the simple agenda I use often. And it's just broken into 3 parts. You can write these 3 parts down. One segment is encouragement. The second segment is equip. And the third segment is empower. And what I mean by that is that when I'm having a meeting with a group of teammates, first part we're gonna focus on is we're gonna encourage. That's gonna be a time to celebrate wins, to show appreciation, to say thank you. Remember, these volunteers do it for free, so you need to thank them, you need to appreciate them, and a time to pray for one another, to pastor them, to love on them, to care for them. The second part is the equip part. This is where you get an opportunity in a meeting to teach and train them the way you want them to work, the way you want them to serve. Maybe you go over the culture one meeting. Maybe another time you talk about how to lead an effective small group. Whatever the case is, whatever fits in your realm. But you need to focus on relevant topics and tips that will help them. One reason we're videotaping this is so that you don't have to necessarily recreate the wheel. You can take materials that are taught, even Devos. Some of the Devos that you guys share every week, they're awesome. I'd be taking them and sharing them with my team. Why wouldn't I? They're good resources. And then the third part is empower. That's where you go over calendaring. You're talking about what's going on over the next 3 months, 6 months. It might be checking on a ministry responsibilities that you've given away, you've empowered people to do. You want to check on it. Remember, I've got to hold people accountable for responsibilities you give away. Maybe it's giving away new ministry, finding people to serve in different capacities. But that's the empowerment stage. But that's the model I've used for years when I'm leading team ministry meetings. Is encourage, equip, and empower. And if you're a teammate, what you can do to support this is attend those meetings. Be a sponge. Be a learner. Say, I want to learn. How can I be a better teammate? How can I be a better volunteer in this role? And then the 6th and final stage is model. We lead best by example. I think Ashley said this, and it's not new to her. I've heard it many years, but she reminded of us. Ministry's better caught than taught. Ministry's better caught than taught. Leaders reproduce who they are, not what. Leaders reproduce who they are, not what they tell you to do. People are watching your example and what you do. So if we want ideal team players, then we need to display humility, hunger, and be smart. Because that's what we're going to reproduce from the people that we lead. We must promote and protect the Hope Church culture that we've defined here. Culture is the way we lead our teammates to behave. It's the way we do things around here. Lead them the way Jesus leads them, with a servant's heart, and pray for them, comfort them, support them. Serving your volunteers is a critical part of your calling as a leader, is to serve those who serve alongside you. And ideal team players can model the humble, the hungry, and the smart. So if you're just a teammate in that role, display those things. So let me wrap it up. Volunteers don't just serve. I wrote this down. I think it's important to remember. Volunteers don't just serve a purpose for the church. In fact, that's worth writing down. Volunteers don't just serve a purpose for the church. We must never view volunteers' time as a means to an end. I have this job, so I need you to do this, and that's all that matters. We should be helping our volunteers unlock their God-given gifts and finding the right place for them on the bus so they can bloom, so they can blossom, so they can be all that God wants them to be. My guess, every one of us in here who are a pastor or a leader, we started as a volunteer. Someone did that for us. Someone poured into us. They didn't see us just as a means to an end. They invested in us. And that's why we're where we are today. Volunteers do not volunteer, they say yes to an invitation. They don't just volunteer, they're saying yes to an invitation. That's why it's so important that we invite them the right way. We invite them with our clear mission, our compelling vision. And here's 4 things I'll just share with you as we finish. 4 things your teammates expect when they say yes to the invitation to join your team. They want you to know them. They want you to know them. They want you to need them. They want you to care for them. And they want you to lead them. And those are only things that we as key leaders leading that ministry can do. They want you to know them. They want you to need them. They want you to care for them. And they want you to lead them. So here's a little assignment before I turn it back over to Pastor Mark. I want you to do this first one right now because it should come pretty easy. We went through these 6 stages. Prayer, maybe you need to pray more. Recruitment, maybe you need to work on your elevator speech and get them to pray. Structure and systems, maybe you need to get stronger there and maybe make it clearer. Maybe you need to write down some expectations of the people, create some job descriptions. Maybe you need to plan better meetings or even start having meetings. Maybe you need to be a better model. But the question is, which of these 6 stages do you need to improve in the most? Just pick one. Write it down on your paper. You're not going to turn it in. You're not going to tell anybody. But which one do you need to improve in the most? It's very obvious. We went through all 6. This is the one that God's shining the flashlight on right now in my life. I can do better here. This is, write it down. And then the next question, the next assignment is, what will you do in the next 10 days to improve in this stage? What will you do? Will you carve out some time to write some job descriptions out or update some job descriptions? Will you carve out some time to pray for the Lord to lay some people on your heart that you're going to have some conversations with and invite them to pray and join the team? What are you going to do over the next 10 days to improve in that stage? Because the key word on there is the underlined word, perpetual. It never ends. We could teach this a year from now, it would still matter. Because we're always building our team. We're always trying to keep our team in place.